Hi, I'm Trish.
And I'm Brandy.
And you're listening to episode 23 of
Connected Conversations. This is your go-to space where international teachers, leaders, and parents like us get together for real talk, real tips, and sharing tools to thrive abroad in the international schools world.
You've joined us for the final episode in our 5-part mini-series on student behavior in international schools. We've talked about why behavior is so often misunderstood abroad, and about culture and mobility and how that complicates expectations, and how systems quietly succeed or fail depending on how they are lived.
Absolutely. And today we are shifting the lens one last time. This episode is part of our Teacher Toolbox series, where we share practical strategies, tips, and tools to strengthen your international teaching and leading practices.
That's right. This episode is not teacher-facing in the traditional sense. It's designed for school leaders.
Heads, principals, coordinators, pastoral leads, and middle leaders who want to strengthen how behavior systems function across their school.
That's right. Most leaders listening already have some sort of behavior systems in place. Of course, policies exist. Processes exist. Expectations are documented.
What we are focusing on in this episode is how those systems actually function day to day and how small leadership shifts can make them even more consistent, more trusted, and easier to hold under pressure.
This episode is not about fixing failure. It's about refining your practice. In international schools especially, even well-designed systems experience pressure at times. Mobility, cultural differences, parent expectations, and constant change all test how your systems hold.
The question is how leadership choices shape what happens next.
Yep. Throughout this episode, we are sharing concrete tools, language, and structures that leaders can use immediately.
Tools that help recalibrate consistency, strengthen alignment, and reduce friction before behavior issues escalate.
That's the key. We will also invite reflection, not as critique, but clarity. We're going to have moments to pause and ask what's working well and what feels steady and where small shifts could really have big impacts.
So as you listen, we encourage you to think like a systems designer. What is already working in your setting, and what one adjustment could make it work even more reliably for everyone involved?
So are you ready? It's time to get connected. One of the most persistent assumptions in schools is that consistency lives at the classroom level. That if teachers were just more aligned or more strict, or behavior, would somehow magically improve. But that framing doesn't give leaders anything concrete to act on.
Yeah, because in practice, consistency doesn't originate in classrooms. It originates from the top-down position in leadership choices. What leaders say repeatedly, what they follow up on, and what they protect when pressure appears is what matters.
Yeah, teachers respond to the system they are working inside. They adapt based on what gets reinforced, what gets supported, and what quietly creates more work or risk for them. So one immediate leadership action is for leaders to reflect on their reinforcement strategies.
Right. Leaders can ask themselves, what behaviors or decisions am I explicitly reinforcing right now? And which ones am I unintentionally ignoring? Because what gets named is what gets repeated. My grandma always used to say, what you focus on is what grows.
Oh, I knew her grandma.
Yes, you did.
For example, referencing agreed escalation steps, shared expectations, or community values by name, rather than re-explaining behavior in a different way each time. That's key. That shared language reduces interpretation.
Just like best practices in teaching refer to a cyclical spiral model of skills reinforcement, leaders who repeat and model their behavior expectations consistently and frequently is the key to success.
Not because teachers and students forget along the way, but because a shared understanding and a clear goal in highly diverse and mobile environments, like international schools, need it repeated in order for it to be replicated.
Right. A practical move here for leaders is to schedule behavior conversations repeatedly and with intention. Leaders can plan short, predictable moments each term to restate expectations rather than waiting for the issues to pop up in order to force the conversation. Think moments like morning meeting reminders or staff professional development updates.
Those morning meetings are like my personal favorite,
Me too.
Strong leaders reinforce behavior systems when nothing is wrong. They intentionally name what is working and connect it back to school-wide expectation.
In reality, that conversation might sound like praising a recent smooth transition, or congratulating a teacher's calm response, or maybe encouraging and clarifying consistent routines for all. If the leader explicitly links these conversations to the system, rather than calling out someone's potentially lax response personality, the entire system will actually be strengthened.
And remember, leaders, your potential silence, that matters here too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When leaders stop referencing behavior systems, teachers don't assume that everything is fine. Instead, they assume flexibility potentially and personally problem solve, in ways that refer to previous systems maybe that they worked under. And it may not reflect the ethos of the current school system in the context they're within.
A useful check for leaders is to just take note of how long it's been since behavior expectations were last discussed publicly outside of a problem. Yep. That gap is where the inconsistency can begin.
Yep. Leaders sometimes worry that repeating expectations in PD sessions will feel heavy, unnecessary, bore teachers. But in reality, for your staff, this repetition creates safety.
Right.
The predictability allows teachers to act with confidence instead of hesitation. And confident teachers intervene earlier and more calmly.
So the actionable reframe is this. School leaders, consistency is not something you should automatically demand from teachers. It is something effective leaders actively model, reinforce, and protect through language, follow-through, and visibility.
And when leadership consistency is visible and predictable, classroom consistency becomes easier to sustain. Not because the staff has changed, but because the system they rely on has.
So if you're a school leader listening to this and wondering what this looks like in practice, here are 3 small actions to take away. First, notice what behavior you are reinforcing. Pay attention to what you praise publicly and what you let pass quietly. Be honest with yourself, because that reflects the reality of your school system more than any digital behavior document does.
Definitely. Second, choose one shared behavior phrase or expectation and repeat it consistently over the next few weeks. Use the same language in your meetings, your emails, and your conversations, so expectations feel predictable rather than interpretive. This can be as simple as be safe, be kind, be respectful as a starting point. Those priorities are now clear.
And third, check your silence. Ask yourself when behavior expectations were last referenced in your staff meetings outside of the problem. If it has been a while, then that's your cue to recalibrate your team before inconsistency appears. Once we accept that consistency is a leadership behavior, the next question becomes very practical. How do leaders actually keep systems alive without micromanaging teachers or adding more workload?
This is where many schools unintentionally undermine themselves. They heavily invest in one strong professional development session, invite a speaker in, roll out a policy, and then assume alignment's going to hold.
Oh, I've been in those kinds of environments. In international schools, that assumption, it rarely works. Staff turnover, new hires, role changes, and just the daily pressure of teaching in diverse classrooms, it means that a shared understanding can erode quite quickly.
And when understanding fades or was never fully established, teachers rarely ask for clarification.
For sure. Most silently adapt. They fill in those gaps using experience from their prior school, maybe their personal instincts, or even their cultural backgrounds, or really just whatever feels safest in that moment.
Yeah, cyclical reinforcement is what prevents that drift. Not more rules and not more documentation, but regular, low-stakes reminders of how this current system works.
Now, okay, we're not saying that you have to repeat your entire behavior policy every month.
Twice a month. No, for sure not.
This looks more like intentionally weaving those expectations into the rhythm of everyday school life.
Yeah, practically, this can look very simple. Brief reminders in the staff meetings about escalation pathways, leaders using the same shared language when referencing behavior in passing.
In my primary context, we found it's really effective to have student assemblies revisiting expectations before those predictable pressure points, like before holidays or after holidays, transitions, or assessment periods.
That's a great strategy. And often you tell teachers what comes up in the next assembly before it happens. And so when the teachers attend those assemblies themselves with the students, they're getting the same consistent messaging and everyone sees it simultaneously.
It's like killing 2 birds with one stone.
That's
ticking
right.
2 boxes with 1 check.
But don't kill birds.
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Okay, this can also look like leaders saying, okay, let's pause, let's recalibrate this, rather than waiting for the inconsistency to turn into frustration.
These moments really matter because they reduce that cognitive load for teachers. When expectations are frequently named, like only walk into the halls, please, or uniform tops should be tucked in consistently, teachers don't have to guess whether they are handling situations correctly or whether leadership will support them when they do so.
Yeah. If behavior is discussed in staff agendas on a cyclical reinforcement basis, like we said before, the repetition of the topic creates space for conversation as well, rather than singling out staff for fear of public correction. Leaders can ask, what's feeling unclear right now? Yeah. Or where are we seeing behavior concerns popping up in different areas of the system?
Yeah, if teachers are able to express real-time scenarios and discuss these things openly as a team in discussions, good reflection can occur and potentially patterns can emerge that might be navigated better in the future.
Oh, it's such a good point. Trish and I are both big advocates for giving your staff time to reflect, assess, and correct course as a team unit. Too much comes at teachers from a top-down approach. We've been in those meetings ourselves, and the best leaders set aside time for their teams to collaboratively discuss issues and brainstorm solutions on their own, rather than always being told what to do.
Yeah, most definitely. And this approach respects teachers' professionalism, and there is so much of it that's undervalued out there, right? It does not assume that teachers need policing. It assumes they are working inside a complex system and requires shared collaboration and recalibration.
When strong leaders normalize revisiting expectations, teachers are more likely to raise concerns early rather than managing that uncertainty alone. One of the clearest signs of a healthy system is that teachers can articulate the behavior process confidently and consistently.
And trust me, that confidence does not come from a one-off training session at the start of the year, or by handing the teacher the staff handbook with the behavior expectations hidden within on page 72, right?
And understanding your school's behavior expectation comes from repetition, clarity, and leadership follow-through over time.
Leaders, do not think that cyclical behavior reinforcement and revisiting your expectations is extra work layered on top of everything else.
It's not. You are creating the change you want to see and protecting the strong work your learning community is already doing by naming and praising it as you go along.
So if you want a concrete takeaway from this segment, focus on rhythm rather than intensity.
Oh, I love that. Because growing a rhythm will build a strong future intensity as well, for sure. So try to choose one predictable moment each month or term where behavior expectations are briefly revisited, restated, or recalibrated.
Use that same language consistently and invite community conversations before problems escalate.
When behavior reinforcement is routine, your school-wide consistency of it becomes sustainable.
Now let's transition into how you communicate these behavior expectations into your wider community. We all know that some of the strongest predictors of stability in any system out there are how well your parents understand and support something.
Oh, definitely. Parent alignment is a powerful indicator of the system's clarity. That clarity does not happen automatically, as we've already said. It's built intentionally through leadership communication over time.
And international schools especially are good about having families arrive with very different experiences from their past schooling, different ideas about discipline and authority. Most parents want to support the school in theory. That's what I think and I believe I've seen.
Hope so.
They simply need a clear picture of how best to do that. This means they have to align with what acceptable behavior looks like at this place, how deviations from that from that behavior are handled, and what their role is in this specific school context.
Right. When leadership takes the time to start to help new parents understand expectations and processes, future behavior conversations feel procedural rather than personal. And that time spent up front in creating a common understanding, it can lower the emotional intensity if and when challenges arise. Suddenly, behavior responses from the school feel predictable instead of reactive.
Yeah. Proactive conversations and communications is really your key leadership move here. Leaders who share those behavior expectations before they are tested create an alignment with parents without the confrontation. If you're clear up front that no phones or smartwatch technology is going to be used during the school day, and that they must be kept hidden in their bags in the lockers, then there should be no surprises when you have to address violators with parents later.
Yeah, absolutely. And for these expectations, the beginning of the year orientation is one entry point, but we all know that many parents miss these meetings.
Yep.
So alignment should be maintained through ongoing and low pressure reminders via newsletters, policies, signed codes of conduct, and the like.
Yep. This can also look like short little parent communications, messages on your social media app, parent class meetings that you have, hopefully quarterly or, at least twice a year, parent workshops discussing the science behind why your school approaches behaviors like you do. All of these add up. These should be your foundational expectations, and set that clearly, not only when there is a need to respond to incidences that occur.
And that can sound something like, as a reminder, this is how we support students when expectations aren't met, rather than we're seeing an increase in behavior issues.
I hate those emails as a parent. As we mentioned previously, effective leaders build these into predictable moments in the year, such as before or after long breaks, like Brandy said, or during those key transitions. But leaders need to especially remember to revisit these expectations clearly when new families join the community throughout the year.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And this cannot be overstated. Every single new community member added to a class is time of recalibration and readjustment that is needed. The best class teachers are working at the class level to help new students integrate, but school leadership needs to ensure that they've done their part in helping the parents also in their understanding of expectations as well.
Yeah, leaders need to clearly frame to new parents how this community functions, not as warnings or corrections, but as a collective understanding for their child's success. When leadership owns this communication and does it up front, teachers are protected.
And teachers should never really be the first or even the only people explaining behavior systems to families. When leaders hold the narrative, teachers can focus on implementation rather than the justification.
For sure. Another growth move is the consistency of language, as we've said. Parents should hear the same core expectations regardless of who they speak to.
Yes. Shared language reduces confusion. Confusion.
Yep.
I'm confused
It's
saying confusion. It also prevents the sense that outcomes depends on who you talk to.
Yeah. When leaders communicate expectations early and often, parents are far more likely to trust the system-based responses they're going to get.
Exactly. And remember that trust does not eliminate disagreement.
No.
It's probably still going to happen, but it definitely prevents the escalation.
Yeah. The real shift here is that behavior conversations stop feeling personal to parents.
Right. They become conversations about process, values, and shared expectations.
If you want one practical takeaway here, focus on visibility rather than volume.
Good one. Choose one set moment this term to proactively restate and celebrate. There's the key, celebrate how behavior was supported and addressed in your school. Share this with your parent community.
Yeah, we often focus on responding to concerns, but we forget to highlight those successes too. Kids are learning every day, Use calm, shared language to explain the process, not the problem.
When parents understand the system before they need it, then alignment becomes much easier to sustain.
So building on what we just talked about with parent communication, there's another layer to school behavior alignment that happens without emails, the meetings and the policies. Shock of all shocks. This is as simple as leadership visibility. No, we're not talking about being present during the incidents or issues, although sometimes, unfortunately, we are, but being present in the ordinary low-stake moments as a leader.
Yeah, one of the most underestimated influences on behavior systems is how often leaders and teachers are seen when nothing is wrong.
Yep.
Presence in everyday moments shapes the trust long before any formal response is needed.
Yeah, when leaders are only visible during discipline times or difficult conversations, parents and students quickly associate leadership with conflict.
Me?
You. I don't want to go to Miss Brandy's office.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, you know it. That association raises tension and makes every interaction feel high stakes, even when it does not need to be.
Yeah, that's so true. Strong leaders intentionally build relationships without the agenda. These are happening, or that can happen during pickup conversations, hallway greetings, playground presence, those short little check-ins that are not about fixing anything at all. They matter more than people realize. Think about the TikTok sensation of Principal Lamb with over 335,000 followers.
Love him.
If you don't follow him now.
He's fun.
He really is. But his specialty is that he's present when moments are small. He builds relational capital with all members of his school community.
And that capital becomes protective when behavior issues arise. When parents already know that leadership is calm, present, approachable, systems-based decisions feel easier to trust.
Parents are less likely to escalate quickly because the relationship already exists outside of an issue.
This is not about being constantly available or trying to be liked. It's about being predictably present in the life of the school, right? Visibility also sends out a powerful message to staff, teachers, and families. Notice when leaders are present beyond the meetings and the emails.
Presence communicates support without needing to say it explicitly. In international schools where communities are transient and trust has to be rebuilt repeatedly, these moments matter even more.
Greeting families at the door in the morning. That's my favorite thing to do,
Me too.
right? Like being present during those passing periods. As a teacher, I like meet the students at the door too, you know, like popping around to classrooms as a leader when classes are in session. We call these learning walks or walkthroughs, right? Leadership visibility stabilizes system because it humanizes it. Great leaders are consistent. So if you want to join their ranks, try choosing at least one low stakes moment each day or each week where you are visible without an agenda.
Oh, that's so powerful. And don't let those last minute pop-ups pull you away from building that consistency either. I am definitely, I do this. I get so busy in my day-to-day and I realize this is one of the most important things is to make sure that this is built into your schedule too. Because over time, these moments build more trust than any behind the scenes policy ever could.
Okay, we want to shift the lens here because one of the most powerful leadership moves around behavior is for us all to realize that expectations are learned skills, especially at the student level, not static rules.
And as good teachers, we know that learned skills need to be taught, practiced, revisited, especially in international schools where change is constant.
And sometimes those expectations can drift, right? When students, teachers, and classrooms become a little too comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
It happens. But it is rarely because students have forgotten how to behave. Rarely.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. It's because the context has changed since those beginning of the school year vibes. I love those vibes. Yeah. The classroom has evolved since September. There might be new routines, maybe new peers, new energy after break, or just simply time passing.
Yeah, strong leaders plan for this. They treat behavior expectations the same way they would treat curriculum. Something that's introduced, revisited, and retaught as students grow and the environment shifts.
Practically, this means leaders intentionally create moments where expectations are remodeled and they're practiced with the students.
Yeah, it can be simple. Leaders narrating expectations during daily moments, saying things like, this is what responsibility looks like here, or this is how we reset and move forward. These kind of things help students reconnect behavior to shared values rather than individual correction.
And if you listen to our last episode, which was a Teacher Toolbox episode, just before this one, you'll remember that honing in on what an expectation looks like and sounds like is the clearest way to recalibrate those expectations.
Those small moments, those in the halls, in the cafeteria, in the library moments, they're so powerful. Using the shared language of what should it look like right now? And what does it sound like right now? Like in those environments really flips the script on students to reflect while also maintaining the school-wide expectations.
That's right. Leaders can implement looks like and sounds like anywhere within a school. Those redirections are clear, consistent, and a recalibration all on its own.
When recalibration is proactive, students experience boundaries as stable rather than reactive. They're less likely to test limits, because the expectations feel predictable and reinforced through practice, not punishment.
Importantly, recalibration should be planned, not improvised. Just as we suggest leaders schedule these moments intentionally for their staff, doing the same for students will prevent small misalignments from becoming bigger issues later.
So choose one or a couple predictable moments in your school year. Try to explicitly use those moments to check in with the students about behavior expectations within the school. Treat it like instruction, not correction. Model it, practice it, and name it as part of how your school works. get the shared conversations going in the classroom.
When leaders help their teams to embed the behavior into the curriculum, consistency becomes so much easier to sustain. Not because students are controlled, of course, but because expectations are clearly taught, discussed, and shared.
Now, let's say you've done all those things we've just listed above as a leader, but a situation still escalates and lands at your door.
Oh, no.
This is your test. This is your test, Brandy. This is where values meet pressure and where your leadership behavior becomes visible and everyone's watching.
This is like a movie trailer.
Oh, I know.
What's going to happen next? In this moment, it matters far more than most leaders realize, because how you respond here teaches your staff, your students, and the parents of your school exactly how the system really works. Not the written version, the lived one.
Yeah, when a parent raises a concern about how behavior was handled, often involving their own child, which they naturally are highly invested in.
Naturally.
That first leadership response really sets the tone for what's to come. And if that first response immediately questions the teacher's decision, boom, your system fractures.
Oh, even if that questioning is subtle or well-intentioned, it signals that teacher judgment is provisional and that escalation might lead to reversal. It's a hint to parents that they immediately have a case to be argued.
Teachers learn from this quickly. And they stop escalating early. They manage quietly. They avoid risk.
Yeah. And then over time, inconsistency grows, not because teachers don't care. Absolutely not. But because they're protecting themselves.
Yeah. We're not saying that backing our teachers publicly does not mean you agree with every decision they make, you know, or that you never need to personally coach them behind the scenes. It means that in front of parents and students, leaders anchor the conversation in the system, not the teacher's individual interpretation.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah. Language absolutely matters here as well. Leaders who say, this is how we handle behavior in our school, shifts the focus away from personal blame. Coaching can happen later, privately, where reflection can occur without undermining trust.
Yeah, you're not saying this is how Mrs. Pospicio handles these things or Miss Trisha does this, right? This distinction is especially important in international schools where parent pressure can be intense and expectations vary quite widely.
Yeah. In fee-paying contexts, leaders often feel pulled between maintaining the parental relationships and maintaining school systems. Teachers can often be in a pinch point in the middle, but systems do not survive when negotiation is allowed. Systems survive clarity.
And clarity over time actually reduces conflict rather than increases it. You know, one of the most damaging patterns we see is the quiet reversal of consequences after parent meetings.
Oh, those are really rough.
I hate that.
Me too. When even when a leader does this to preserve harmony, these reversals teach everyone that outcomes are negotiable.
And your teachers will notice this immediately. Students are going to test boundaries more confidently. Enjoy that. And soon parents will learn which pathways lead to the outcomes they want.
So true. And then the equity erodes because the families most comfortable advocating for their child will soon gain different outcomes to those who are not.
I have seen this time and time again, especially in middle school when dealing with bullying, where it really starts to pop up more frequently, right? Often with the parents of the bullier denying the wrongdoing and now bringing up multiple past issues where their child was in fact the one being bullied.
Oh my gosh, I've been in those conversations too. And this happens in primary. Strong leaders will interrupt this pattern by holding the line calmly and predictably. They communicate that concerns can be raised, of course, conversations can happen, and reflection is absolutely welcome. But the system of consequences this time and in this context itself is not up for renegotiation.
Yeah, that's about this time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So this doesn't mean that leaders are going to ignore mistakes if and where they were made. You know, it means mistakes are addressed within the system, not outside of it. And that distinction is what preserves trust.
Teachers who feel publicly supported are more willing to act early. They will document patterns and they'll engage in reflective coaching. Students experience boundaries as fair rather than personal.
Yeah, parents learn that consistency, not persistence, shapes outcomes.
And they will keep trying to be persistent.
Yes, they do.
When consistency and credibility is in place, behavior systems can withstand any pressure without breaking.
So let's talk about a way that behavior consistency can build across your school. One of the easiest ways is to have clear, manageable, actionable ways for teachers to document behaviors.
When leaders talk about documenting behaviors with staff, there is often that silent holding of breath. But that response is not necessarily fear. It doesn't mean it's resistance to documentation either. It's merely paperwork fatigue.
Oh, so true. There were days when I felt like going into the management system and separately documenting the 3 or 4 students involved in an incident in my classroom felt like just another mounting task already added to my already full workload that needed to be achieved in a too short planning period.
Yeah, that's teacher life for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes an added issue to that reaction usually comes from uncertainty as well. Uncertainty about what needs to be documented, how detailed should it be, and whether anyone is actually following up on it.
Have I just sent this to the ether to never be looked at again?
Yeah.
The leadership move here is not to ask for more documentation. It's providing clarity with your teachers and consistency around what matters and why.
We know that effective documentation is about identifying patterns over time so decisions can feel grounded, consistent, and defensible rather than react.
If some teachers are documenting regularly and others are not, that is not a compliance issue. It's a support issue.
Teachers who are not documenting may need clearer guidance or maybe some shared examples.
Yeah, the examples I find was really useful. Okay. Teaching your teachers the art of objectivity is also key. I know you've been working on this a lot, So documentation should really focus on observable behavior, context and response, not interpretation or emotion. Short, factual notes are far more useful than long narratives and are quicker for teachers to maintain. I keep telling you, think police report.
Yes.
Yes. At this time. We've even encouraged our teachers to write the original story into AI and then have it remove the subjective tone because it'll do that perfectly for you.
Yes.
And if that is one of the issues that your teacher is struggling with, that objectivity, that might really help.
Yeah. And let's add that correct, non-biased communication and documentation should also extend beyond classroom incidents. Parent meetings, those follow-up conversations, and agreed next steps should be recorded clearly and simply whenever possible. It can be really hard because sometimes you are very emotionally charged.
Really upset. And then he said...
If the incident feels long for typing, train your teachers on the voice notes mode option as well, and then simplify it with the AI tools that Trish said.
Leaders reinforce the value of documentation by using it visibly and giving these tips to their teachers. They reference patterns in staff and parent meetings, use notes to guide the decisions that they take, and show how documentation really helps inform the next steps, and it signals that your teacher time is respected.
Consistent, high-quality documentation of behavior incidents, as well as follow-up meetings, it allows the leaders and teachers to act with confidence rather than relying on memory, emotion, or pressure. And when appropriate, having parents acknowledge or sign off on meeting notes, that also can add clarity and shared accountability too.
Yeah, if your school doesn't yet have a solid documentation system, agree on a standard one as a leadership team, okay? What behavior warrants us documenting? What level of detail do we expect? And where should we record this? Above all, who has access to reading it? Because confidentiality really needs to be protected. But then can patterns emerge? These are conversations you have to have.
Support consistency by checking in with staff and offering guidance where documentation might not be happening yet. And ensure parent meetings and follow-ups are all documented clearly as well.
Yeah, because when documentation is consistent, objective, and purposeful, it stops feeling like extra work.
That's so true. It becomes a tool that protects fairness, it strengthens decision-making, and it supports teachers across the system.
All right, before we end this episode, we want to offer a brief diagnostic moment for those school leaders listening.
Remember, behavior systems are always teaching people something, even when no one is explicitly naming it. Your current focus should be about noticing what your system may be teaching right now. So, as you listen, consider these questions honestly.
What? Do your teachers escalate behavior early or only once situations have become unmanageable?
Number 2, when concerns reach leadership, do outcomes tend to change after parent meetings, or do they remain consistent regardless of who is advocating?
3, when a new teacher joins your school mid-year, could they explain the behavior system clearly after just a few weeks, or would they still be guessing?
And 4, now consider your parents. Do parents react to behavior escalation with understanding, or do they see the system as negotiable?
None of these questions are about blame, school leaders. The outcome of this diagnostic moment is for you to increase your awareness about your current system strength.
Because awareness allows leaders to act proactively rather than reactively, strengthening systems before pressure exposes their weaknesses.
So as we close this episode and this 5-part behavior mini-series, one of our first big tackles here, we want to leave you school leaders with some strong reminders.
The most important of these is that the best behavior systems hold well, not only when you have clear policies, but when you have strong leaders and trained staff who maintain the consistent application of all of those expectations.
Throughout this episode, we shared 6 practical ways leaders can strengthen their behavior systems day to day.
We talked about consistency as leadership behavior, repeating expectations, using shared language, and reinforcing what matters publicly rather than assuming alignment.
We explored cyclical reinforcement for your staff, building rhythm into systems so expectations are revisited calmly and predictably instead of only when problems occur.
We focused on parent alignment as leadership responsibility as well, communicating processes early and often so behavior conversations feel procedural and not personal.
We highlighted the role of leadership visibility, being present in those low-stakes moments to build trust before it is tested.
We reframed behavior conversations as threads to be woven into the curriculum and treating behavior expectations as learned skills that need to be retaught and practiced with students.
And we named, we did a lot.
We did do a lot.
We named documentation as a protection tool for all of the parties involved. Clear, objective, and consistent documentation supports equity and helps build systems that hold under pressure.
The common thread here is predictability. Predictability for teachers, students, and parents.
Strong leadership does not remove challenges, right? It creates trust in the system and that the system will respond consistently when challenges arise.
We hope you've picked up some helpful tools and tricks throughout this series along the way. If you would like to continue the conversation to support your own processing of your school's behavior systems, your leadership dynamics, or school culture, you can connect with us at our website at connectedglobal.org.
On our website, you'll find practical resources for international teachers and leaders, including tools connected directly to this behavior series. She's been amazing at creating these behind the scenes, leadership guides, and school culture resources.
And while you're over there checking out all the goodies we've created for you, don't forget to sign up for our quarterly newsletter where you'll receive insights on what's happening at Connected Global, as well as in the international schools realm.
Yep. You can also book a consultation with us to walk through this episode, your current challenges, or anything else you're navigating in your leadership role.
So whether you're rebuilding systems from scratch, you're refining what already exists, or you're trying to steady things under pressure, we're always happy to talk it through with you.
Yep. Thank you for joining us for this behavior mini-series. And if this episode resonated with you, please like and comment down below, share it with a friend. The best way to grow this community is to help others find us.
So until next time, may your expectations be clear,
your systems be predictable,
and your students be really well behaved
and international.
I can't believe it. Our picture, this is Teacher Toolbox episode.
Teacher Toolbox.
Here we go. Leadership. So what should our picture be?
Leadership. I loved your hair in the last one.
Oh, I did not. It was horrible.
The big, so beautiful mane over here on the side.
Oh, I was looking at the episode with Patty, and my hair was like.
I was like, it was gorgeous.
Really, I
it was
also
like
that.
what?
Yeah.